It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Senegal's players.
Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and today we will be looking at Senegal's squad for the 2022. We interrupt this media cast with a bold and slashing edit, a brief introduction to the shortened player series. It's basically the last section of the full-length version. There we examined the formation up until June 2022. We also went through all the players who had recently appeared for the national team and judged the likelihood of their making the squad and giving information on their history and standing with the squad. For this media cast, we have washed all that chatter out and are panning down to the nugget. We hope it incites your interest in the full-length version, the link to which is available in the show notes. So now, joining in progress. All right, well that brings us to the end of the player-by-player thing. So we'll begin with some notes. Going back to the beginning of the podcast, so we've seen that they've switched to a 4-3-3 formation, and we've also seen that they have a very stable squad with the same players for the most part in the same positions, and even the same players usually starting in their positions with regular backups that we know. So not a huge pool of players to choose from for Senegal, but a very steady group of players they have. So generally, when I've seen this in other tournaments, they tend to be a strong team because they've played a lot together. The danger, though, is that if one of them gets injured, like we saw with a couple of players here, Boulaye Dia, that the player replacing them hasn't played that much, or they may lack substitutes to bring in or lack substitutes of a similar quality. So that is a bit of a risk that Senegal runs. However, having seen them in the 2019 and 21 African Cup, I would say they're the best African team and a real threat. And, on that note, leading on to club affiliations here, they probably have the best club affiliations of any African team, with players playing for top teams. So they have a couple of players with Chelsea in England. They have two players with Paris Saint-Germain, two other players with Premier League clubs in England. And then Bayern Munich is also represented. And just generally good quality clubs, second tier teams after the ones I've mentioned. Leicester City is there too, so that's another Premier League club, and then teams in France like Marseille, and then secondary teams in France like Nancy and Reims and stuff. In fact, all of them playing in Europe. So they won't be really taken by surprise by European teams. That brings me on to another note. It'll be interesting to see how they do against European teams. In the past, it was always kind of African teams being a bit overwhelmed at the Cup, whether it was a bit of stage fright or whether the region was actually weaker. Those lines are kind of disappearing a little bit. And when you have a situation like this, all of the players playing in Europe, they're hardly going to be taken by surprise. And they're playing for big teams, so they're not going to be stage struck. They're not going to get stage fright because they're used to playing pretty big games. Okay, we'll take a look at their age and experience. And they do have a lot of players who are above 30. That is 7 players above 30, and most of the squad above 25 years old. So among the players who are serious candidates Most of them are 25 years old or more. The biggest candidate below 25 is Ismail Assar, and but the other ones are all kind of probably bench players rather than starters. Papa Gay and Papa Matt Assar being amongst the youngest players there. In terms of, so the average age on the team is 27.8 years old, which is quite old. When we do the update podcast, I'll be able to compare that with other teams a bit better. The average number of caps they have is 26.5, which is fairly high. I don't know really how much that tells us there. So we'll move on to the things to watch, or the players to watch. Well, at the back, they have a very solid and experienced defense. So they proved their worth against African teams, allowing just, get this, 3 goals over their 14 games in the last 2 African Cups. 3 goals over 14 games. So obviously that's a solid defense. There's always the question, though, of how it's going to hold up against teams from other regions. So in the 2018 World Cup, they allowed 4 goals to Poland, Japan, and Colombia. Neither of those teams, with the exception of Colombia perhaps, are really known to be big scoring teams. Interestingly, in this tournament, they have Qatar, Netherlands, and Ecuador, which on the whole are much more attacking teams than they met in 2018. Qatar really has an impressive offense. I think they're going to be a handful to deal with. So it'll be interesting to see how this defense performs against them. Moving on to the attack, I'm going to give you some percentages here of the players expected to get goals. So on the wings, we have Sadio Mane and Ismail Assar. We can almost view them as forwards, and they are in a 4-3-3, along with Keita Balde, actually. And then we have the out-and-out forwards in Boulaye Dia, Famara Diédhiou, and the less experienced Habib Diallo. So among those players, just think for a second, who do you think has the highest percentage of goals? Well, most of us would probably say Sadio Mane, and he has an impressive 36%. So that's basically scoring a goal slightly more than 1 in 3 games. But actually the highest percent is Diédhiou Famara, who has 10 goals in 24 games. So again, another argument in favor of him being the starting forward. Third among them is not one of the forwards, but actually the right winger, kind of right forward, Ismail Assar, who has a 21% goal ratio. That's 10 goals in 47 matches. And also up there is Keita Balde, 6 goals in 40 matches, 15%. That's actually not that high, but it is higher than all of the other forwards, Boulaye Dia, Abdoulaye Diallo, and Habib Diallo. Habib Diallo and Boulaye Dia, who only have less than 15%. Although they haven't played that many games, but 2 in 14 or 2 in 17 games is not that great. The other player, Abdou Diallo, also has 12%, but he is a central defender. So I think he goes up for corners and nods a couple in. So 12% is good for a defender, but not that great for Boulaye Dia and Habib Diallo, who are forwards. Okay, and moving on to new players, we have a few new, though none have made real inroads into the team. So we have central defense player Alpha Junku, who we saw earlier. Spain and Senegal are possibly arguing over. He plays for Granada in Spain, but was loaned to Barcelona, probably Barcelona B in Spain, but looks like a possible up-and-comer for them. In attacking midfield position, who I think is actually going to make the squad is Iliman Ndiaye, and he is currently with Sheffield United. He just played his first cap recently in the 4 games since the African Cup there. And we have right winger Demba Sek, who is also very young. No caps for the national team, but he was on the bench in June of 2022 for the one of the last 2 of those 4 games since the African Cup. So the tournament, it seems to me, will come too soon for Alpha Junku and Demba Sek, but Iliman Ndiaye, I think, will make the squad because they have kind of a lack of attackers. The next category is notable absences. So I'll just go over some of the big players who have left the team. And Salif Sane in central defence was off the team, so left a bit of a hole there. And that hole seems to be filled now by Abdou Diallo. Okay, also on the right wing, a couple of players leaving a bit of a problem for them to decide on a right winger. A right back. So Musa Wag and Lamine Gassama now seem to be off the squad, and replacing them is Bouna Sarr, although he sometimes move up to the midfield. So during the course of this podcast, I speculated actually that Youssouf Sabaly may be the one to replace him if Bouna Sarr moves into the midfield. Another notable absence is Mbaye Niang as a forward, who was a forward during the World Cup and the 2019 African Cup, but kind of made a sudden exit from the team, hasn't been called up. And they're having a bit of trouble actually replacing his position because Boulaye Dia is injured now, and it looks like Detu will make his way into the starting position there, but it's still a bit up in the air. Okay, and then finally, injuries. I expect that Crepin Diatta will be recovered in time for the Cup. However, Boulaye Dia is less certain because it's a kind of seems like a long-term injury he's got. So we'll keep an eye on all of those things. Okay, well, we're going to end the podcast with just a review of what we think is the starting lineup here. So manager Aliou Cisse will definitely be leading the team through the Cup. Not much doubt about starting goalkeeper Edouard Mendy, but we think Seny Dieng and Alfred Gomis will probably be the 2 that make the squad as backups. In central defence, Kalidou Koulibaly and Abdou Diallo seem fairly set in their roles, with Papa Abou Cisse and possibly Abdoulaye Seck. Cisse is likely to make the squad, Abdoulaye Seck a little less likely. At the left-back position, Saliou Ciss seems to have the edge in a race with Fodo Ballo-Touré, but both of them seem to have a fairly good bid. It'll be one or the other. At right back, Bouna Sarr, there is a chance that Bouna Sarr will move up into the midfield and Youssouf Sabaly will make the squad. A possible other selection there is Ibrahima Mbaye. In the defensive midfielder, Napoli's Mendy is for sure, and Papa Gueye we consider making the squad, but as a substitute. Central midfielders, Idrissa Gueye and Cheikhou Kouyaté we consider starters, and Papa Matar Sarr we think is going to make the squad but be a substitute. On the left wing, no doubt Sadio Mane will be there and as a starter. And possible, maybe a little stronger than possible, Keita Balde, although he may not play as that left forward in their 4-3-3 system. We'll put him as a substitute. On the right side, right winger, Ismail Assar is pretty much a shoe-in and not much competition for that position. And in the attacking midfielder, I'm going to say Iliman Ndiaye, the young player, will, is he young? It doesn't matter, new to the squad at least, will make the squad, but as a substitute. And just for a lack of other forwards, Famara Diédhiou, who's certainly not a bad forward, just hasn't really established himself in the position, but likely will now, especially because Boulaye Dia is an injury doubt. So we think Boulaye Dia will definitely make it if he's fit, but otherwise they'll be relying on Habib Diallo and Bemba Dieng, who will probably be substitutes if they make the squad. So we're going to come back in November to find out just how wrong we were in our thinking here. And certainly there's always a few surprises at the end, injuries or new players that make it in. So keep in mind, or keep your eye out for that update, both on the players and on the teams. And that'll probably be in early November. And otherwise, you can find us at soccerphiles. If you search Soccerphiles Canada in Google, that's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And our website is soccerphiles.captivate.fm. And you can also check our show notes for a bit of direction and, checking our previous series on the podcast and all that. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.